And welcome everybody to the 16th edition of the Deserve to Win podcast. As always, I'm your host, Eric J. Troutman, the czar of the TCPA, the czar of everything these days, coming at you from our beautiful new podcast studio here, of course, in Irvine, California. Who's my co-host today?
I am Pooja J. Amin, Queenie of TCPAWorld, and Eric Troutman's partner.
Well said. I think of myself more as Pooja Amin's partner, but hey, you know what? That's fine with me. That's right. And who's our guest today?
Roger
Anderson.
Roger Anderson.
Of the Jolly Roger, a extraordinary entrepreneur, and really excited to have the guy on. He's going to be talking about this really cool product that he's developed, which, brace yourselves, folks, like wastes the time of telemarketers and makes their lives harder, which is kind of tough though, because telemarketers have a pretty tough job as it is. I know, right? Don't cry for me, Argentina. But I do think that this guy's really cool, and I think everyone's gonna like to hear from him. But before we get to that, who else do we have? Young lady.
Hi guys, my name is Brittany Andres. I am an associate attorney at Troutman Amin and the Baroness of TCPA.
The Baroness, a lovely Baroness. Welcome. And last but not least,
I am Tori Guidry. I am the Dame of TCPAWorld and an associate attorney at Troutman Amin LLP.
Wonderful Dame. And I like that you ended on the upswing. LLP. LLP. That was fantastic. So lots going on, folks. I know so many of you are tuning in, of course, to TCPAWorld.com and to our broader the content that we have on our YouTube channel. And so you're following very closely, but I mean, the czar is tired. The czar has been pushing really hard. I've been in front of the FTC, of course. Oh my goodness, my comments, or not my comments, my little address to the FTC at the open meeting. So much feedback I'm getting. People were so grateful and so kind. Obviously, I'm working really hard to help the good actors in the lead generation industry. But people are very responsive. It's amazing to kind of read all the praise I've been getting on that. And look, all I'm trying to do is get clarity, right? All I'm trying to do is take care of people. That's what we do around here. We try to take care of people, try to figure out what the law is so that we can give them good advice. And when the FTC does something crazy, like try to change the law through a LinkedIn post, I mean, you got to do something about that, right? You can't just like, not that people need to see the difference between me and other lawyers, but like, I understand you could just be like a regular old attorney hanging out, right, with clients that are impacted by this. And you're just like, oh, it's okay. The FTC just changed the law over LinkedIn. Like, whatever, no big deal. But what are you talking about? Like, you got to figure this out. Like, are people even responding to this? I don't know. I don't know what anyone else is doing. I know what I'm doing. So I got a lot of feedback over that. That was a great story. I really enjoyed being part of that. Of course, I'm also talking to Congress. In fact, by the time this airs, there will probably be an announcement that I can't talk about yet, but there will probably be an announcement coming out of Congress, and we're working hard to facilitate that. And then simultaneously, of course, the NPRM proceeding, which we've been talking about endlessly, it seems like, since this thing came out in March. Very, very big deal in front of the FCC. And Pooja, you've been helping me reach, of course, Responsible Enterprises Against Consumer Harassment, the lead trade organization right now out there on behalf of industry, pushing for a little breathing space, pushing for a little clarity, pushing to yes, stop the bad actors. We have to stop the bad actors, stop the robocalls that nobody wants, but also preserve that lead generation world, which is really, it's a superpower. Like I told the FTC, it's a superpower of the American economy. It's very, very valuable. It's very diverse. It's something that you really want to preserve. You don't want to shut this down wholesale. You want to stop the bad actor if you have to. You have to. But you also don't want to make it so that, Sally in Rochester, New York, the independent Allstate agent can't buy a lead anymore and connect with a customer. Like, you can't have that as the other extreme. So we've got to be thoughtful. And again, look, I mean, I don't want to say that I'm in here solving the world's problems, but I really think that the REACH standards is that middle ground that everyone can agree to. It really allows businesses to continue to operate, allows consumers to continue to have comparison shopping, and it stops the bad actors, right? It solves everything we're looking to solve. So, let's just get that done. So that's a big story, of course, but the biggest story kind of out of the FCC, again, this is like a lot of the czar kind of promoting himself, which I never do. But this is very serious, which is that we have a fifth commissioner now. A fifth commissioner, Ms. Gomez, has been appointed, and the Senate has approved her nomination by President Biden. So she is now the third Democratic commissioner. So that means the FCC is back to full strength. There are 5 commissioners over there. You've got the Chairwoman Rosenworcel, you've got Starks, and now you've got Gomez, are your three Democrats, and then you've got Carr, and you've got Symington, who are your two Republicans. And so Reach is working with the offices of all of these commissioners here in the next month, as well as working with the Bureau. That's the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau over at the FCC, the folks that actually write the rulings, right? Write the actual orders on the NPRM. And we're trying to get them to understand why this is, it's really important that, yes, we stop robocalls. Yes, and look, and I've been leading with this for a year now. I mean, there is nobody, I think, that has advocated more firmly to stop the bad actors in the lead generation industry, and for the lead generation industry to look at itself in the mirror and realize it has completely failed, in my opinion, to self-regulate. Like, you have to own that. That owning that and recognizing that things need to change, but saying that the industry needs to be shut down, these are two different things, right? Yes, it needs to be regulated because, yes, there's been bad actors and abuses, but it should not be completely shut down. And that's all we're trying to accomplish here. But now that we've got, right, all 5 commissioners, the FCC is poised to rule on the NPRM, just as I predicted, probably here by the end of the year. And Reach is out there. We're fighting the good fight. We're doing what we can. But we're up against some pretty powerful opponents. We've got, 12 Democratic senators have come out and supported shutting down the lead generation industry. We know that 28 attorneys AG have come out and said, geez, not only should leads not be sold, if you have sold a lead, you've already broken the law. And if you've made a call, it's already retroactively violating the TCPA. And Peronic the Wolf has already called me and told me he loves this and he's going to start using it right now. Yes, it's terrible. And of course, we're against the NCLC, which, by the way, I mean, these guys are on the take, right? And so I've been publishing, I've been talking about this. I'm going to talk about this every opportunity I get. The NCLC, that's the National Consumer Law Center, right? They've got the gall to go into the FCC, into Congress, and every time they do something, they say, the NCLC, on behalf of their low-income clients, here we are on behalf of our low-income clients. It's such a scam because they are getting hundreds of thousands of dollars, really millions of dollars, right, from the TCPA plaintiffs' lawyers who are funneling this money to them. I mean, I say to basically buy them into continuing to advocate for these, these positions of broader TCPA, more lawsuits, more class actions. And the NCLC is on the take. They're getting all this money from the judgments and from the settlements via what's called a side prey distribution, which is just a way for the plaintiffs' lawyers to funnel money into these allegedly nonprofit groups, but they're making millions of dollars. I don't know where this money's going. Like, I'm not saying that anyone over there is pocketing it. I mean, I don't know where it goes, though. I mean, there's millions of dollars going in, so where's it going? I don't know where it's going.
They can only spend so much on their boats, right? Until their parking lot gets full.
The plaintiffs' lawyers. Now, I'm not saying the NCLC has boats. I mean, maybe they do. Yeah, the plaintiffs' lawyers. That's right. And so, anyway, my point is, right, these guys are over here collecting all this money, and then they're turning around and they're saying, they're representing low-income clients. It's baloney to me. But look, what can I do? I'm just one humble lawyer with a massive following and all the incredible power that comes with that. No, I'm kidding, but maybe I'm not. I don't know. But I do try to advocate for good. I try to advocate for right. I try to change things. I try to make things better wherever I see a problem. And to me, what the NCLC is doing, telling people that they're advocating on behalf of low-income clients, but then pocketing millions of dollars, I don't like that. I don't like that. I think that is pretty dishonest. Just my opinion. Okay, so that's what I've got today. Pooja, what do you have today?
Oh, okay. I have 2 quick updates, but important updates. So New York has now, as of September 14th, has amended their state telemarketing law to up potential damages to up to $20,000 per violation.
Jeez.
Recall, New York has already amended their telemarketing statute a few times to include new oral disclosure rules, time restriction rules. The oral disclosure rule, recall, it requires you to immediately and clearly give the consumer an option to be added to the internal DNC list on the onset of the call. So just keep that in mind. Now, penalties can go up to $20,000, and that bill has passed up in September 14th.
Oof.
So New York. Second update. Delaware has now become the 13th state to enact its own state consumer data privacy law.
There's some joke there about the 13 colonies. I just can't quite put it together. But sorry, keep going.
Yeah, so 13th state. Delaware largely tracks Connecticut and Virginia, so it's really interesting to see, what different states are doing and where they're kind of following lead. It still seems like California or the CIPRA is kind of isolated on its own island, whereas other states are pretty much enacting the same regulations. Delaware, fortunately, doesn't have a private right of action. And unlike Connecticut and Virginia, it does not have revenue thresholds. It instead has lower thresholds for how many consumers' data you're collecting. So something to keep in mind if you're doing business in Delaware or selling any kind of goods or services directed to Delaware consumers, you now have the Delaware data.
Okay, but Delaware, right, is famously where everybody is, that you go and incorporate in Delaware.
Yep.
Is the mere fact that you're a Delaware LLC, a Delaware corporation, does that alone trigger the requirements of the statute?
That is not clear in the regulations.
Not clear.
But the way you read it, right, if you're targeting Delaware consumers, if you're incorporated in Delaware, you have a business in Delaware, to me, you're incorporated in Delaware, and presumably you're trying to target something in Delaware.
No, that's got the friendly corporate rules, right? I mean, seriously, it used to be the case that like 90% of every like company, like Amazon and Microsoft, like every company in America was incorporated in Delaware. Now, I think that's softened some. I think that that's not the case necessarily. That's more of like a boomer Gen X mindset. Sorry. I think the millennials have moved on to like incorporating in Wyoming or something. I don't know. But there's still a very, very significant chunk of the American business population that is incorporated there in Delaware.
It's really interesting. I haven't looked into, the whys or whether it would be applicable, but it is really interesting that Delaware has, unlike other states, has lowered, their threshold for something.
Yeah, this feels like a big trap. We got to do some more on
It's
that.
like a big trap.
Yeah.
Even though there's no state, private right of action, keep in mind you still have the AGs and the regulators, so it's still not to be taken lightly amongst like the other 12 states as well.
Pretty big deal.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else?
That's all I have to do.
Good work. And the Dame, what do you got?
I have a very big AI case that came out of DC. So essentially, this guy named Thaler sued because his copyright did not go through. And the DC court answered a very simple, very direct question of whether by virtue of merely owning the AI that produced some kind of artwork or really anything, does that automatically make you able to copyright it, as in being the owner of the copyright? And they said, no, there has to be some sort of human involvement in coming up with these copyrights. They compared it to something like a camera where, yes, the art is created by a machine, but it's not, but the human is the one who presses the button, who composes the picture, who chose what to take the picture from. In this case, it was an AI program where he essentially said, create a picture, and the picture came out. I believe it even named the picture itself. And he put as the author, the creativity machine, the name of the AI program.
Okay, so I'm lost. So somebody went to get a copyright on a AI program that he wrote?
An AI
generated piece of art. Did
art.
he write the AI program?
He owns the AI.
He owns the AI program.
He at least created it in part, from my understanding.
Why can't he get a copyright?
Because he has to have some kind of involvement in creating that art. The machine creating the art said there was not enough human involvement in order to have a copyright.
Interesting. So if you invent the camera, you don't have a copyright in the picture. If you take the camera and you take a picture, I can get a copyright in the picture, can I not? So he took the camera and he took a picture. So why can't he get a copyright?
Well, I mean, that would be like saying that the guy who invented the camera can get a copyright on every picture that was ever taken.
No, it's the guy who's using the camera can get a copyright on that picture. And he can. That's the law.
But based on what he put in the Copyright Office, it was only that it was autonomously created by the AI program.
There it is. So I thought that the real takeaway there was that he was actually trying to get a copyright in the AI's name, which you can't do. It has to be a human being is the creator. I believe that was the ultimate holdup, but maybe I don't know.
He put the program as the author, but the copyright holder as himself.
Okay. So
Yes.
the author would be so imagine ChatGPT writes a book. you can't get a copy. If I tell ChatGPT to write a book, I can't copyright the book that ChatGPT wrote, even though I told it to write the book. It's kind of the theory.
Yes, even if you create that chat GPT.
Very interesting. Well, look, AI is evil anyway, so whatever. That's good. No encouraging AI. It's all bad. No copyrights for you. Baroness, that just leaves you. What do we got?
So I have a case, well, a great case actually. It's Michael Dada versus Rocket Mortgage. Great win for Rocket Mortgage, actually. So the plaintiff, Michael, sued Rocket Mortgage for violations of the TCPA's do not call provisions. Under the TCPA's do not call provisions, it makes it illegal to make more than one telephone solicitation to a phone number that's registered on the do not call registry. Well, a telephone solicitation is defined as a call or message made for the purpose of encouraging a purchase or rental of the investment in property, goods, or services. Well, in this case, the plaintiff alleged that he received the calls from Rocket Mortgage, and he also alleged that he answered the calls from Rocket Mortgage, but there were no allegations regarding what was actually said during those calls, nothing regarding the content of the actual phone calls. Well, the court was like, we need to know what was said on the calls to make an inference as to it being a telephone solicitation, i.e. was made for the purchase of encouraging the rental of or investment in properties, goods, or services. So the court actually granted Rocket Mortgage's motion to dismiss.
Sense. I mean, if you allege you received phone calls from somebody, I mean, you can't infer that just because you received phone calls that they were for marketing purposes. And I get it, right? You get that call and it says telemarketing scam likely. Again, probably not accurate, but leave that alone. You assume, oh, whoever's calling me, they're calling me for telemarketing purposes. That's just the assumption that you make. In a court of law, that's not sufficient. It's not sufficient to just get some calls and then say it must have been marketing. So I definitely agree with this case. And what I thought was actually probably most interesting about the case, the guy's name was Dada. Dada. Like, so my kids call me that. So I was like, is this real? Is this really this guy's name? Are you serious? Dada. Anyway, you know what? There was one other thing I wanted to mention actually before we go to the guest, which is our magazine, which I really should have a copy of. You're going to reference this. So yeah, you got to throw this up, Zane, the magazine here in the corner. It's no longer for free. Sorry, you missed your opportunity. And it's so funny because like literally the day after the cutoff was September 15th, the next day I got a bunch of people that asked for the magazine. I'm like, you guys are just testing me. You're just trying to see if I'm going to be a man of my word. And I am. You can no longer get this thing for free. It's on sale now at troutmanandmean.com/swag. And you can buy the first edition of Deserve to Win, issue 1, for $99. It's a collector's item. It's only going to go up in value. I'm probably going to keep raising the price. So that's just the kind of guy I am. And the second edition that's coming out, and Pooja, who's going to be on the cover of that?
Oh, I think she goes by Queenie.
Yeah, that's going to be you. And we've seen these pictures, and yeah, you're going to want a copy of this thing. I'm just going to throw that out there. So anyway, enough about that. Shall we get to the guest?
That's it.
Now, through the power of the Troutman and Mean LLP law firm, we bring you a special interview with Roger Anderson of the Jolly Roger.
I'm extremely excited to invite to the show my good friend, Roger Anderson, who put together this thing called the Jolly Roger Telephone Company. This is really a fantastic thing. Welcome to the show, man.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. So I was framing this up before we started the interview, and I think it's better that you explain in your own words rather than the czar explaining what the Jolly Roger is.
So the Jolly Roger Telephone Company, it provides a service where we can intercept your telemarketing calls with a robot. So if you get a lot of annoying telemarketing calls, then just ignore the call. We'll take it and we'll keep them on the phone as long as possible and just keep them busy. That's our job.
So the ambition of this app, it's an app, right?
It's really a cloud-based service. You type some codes into your phone and then it forwards to us on no answer or simultaneous ring.
So the ambition though of Jolly Roger is to basically keep the telemarketers on the phone like as long as possible. Just like drain their resources and keep these poor folks on the line. I mean, is that kind of the idea?
That's correct. It was sort of an accidental discovery of mine. I realized, and you'll relate to this, that the regulations and TCPA and things like that don't really apply to overseas scammers. They're not going to comply with any of these things. And so you could scream all day long at them and yell at them, and you could even be a psychoanalyst and make them cry and hate their job and quit tomorrow. But somebody's just going to call the next day, and you'll never stop a telemarketer once they've got your phone number. And so I thought, and again, it was sort of an accidental discovery, but I said, maybe I could just keep them busy, keep them on the line, and make it their problem. Now it's their problem if they call me, not mine.
Fascinating. So, like, how long? Like, I mean, I'm sure that through the years you kind of fine tuned this, but like, what is your average call duration that you can keep the telemarketers on the line now using this robot to kind of communicate?
3 to 5 minutes is very common. A few months ago, we enabled ChatGPT to take over the conversation. So using ChatGPT and some voice cloning services, we've actually been able to keep these conversations going. I wouldn't say indefinitely, but they go on for half an hour, 45 minutes at times.
These guys have no idea that they're basically talking with a robot. It's hilarious.
Correct. Yeah. They don't, they may ask once or twice, like, what's going on, sir? Is this a robot? Is this a recording? I can't tell. But sometimes they'll just keep going. I just monitored one today, 45 minutes of some guy in Belize trying to get somebody to trying to get our robot to transfer through Cash App. So, but never did give up Cash App information.
That's incredible. So, how long has the Jolly Roger been out there? Like, give me the history here. When did you start? When did you found? Like, tell me about the growth pattern. Give me the story.
About 2014, 2015, we all had landlines back then, and I was getting a lot of a lot of telemarketers to my landline, and I had a telemarketer swear at my son. He was 14 at the time, and and he hung up the phone and said, "Dad, he said a bad word." So I I said, I'm a telecom engineer by trade. It's my only talent is telecom. So I said, if anybody can stop telemarketing, I should be able to stop it being a telecom engineer. And I did. I stopped it at my house. And that was 2015, 2014. And then I just started tweaking this algorithm because I realized once my technology gets a telemarketer on the line, now my machine has their human busy instead of the other way around. And that's when I just started tweaking it. And it took years to get the algorithm tuned because I would never send legitimate callers. I'm very conscious of telecom services, and I love and respect the telephone service and telephone network. So I would never send callers accidentally to a robot. It would always be the result of a known telemarketer, things that way. So it was a long development process. Then I got the guts to post some things online in 2016. February 2016 is really the day that it got picked up on a news cycle, and that's when I discovered that everyone hates telemarketing as much as I do. So that was sort of how it began. 2016. By May of that year, I'd figured out how to monetize it. I just needed to break even because it was such an expense. It was expensive to provide it. Um, but in order to get all the publicity and press that I was getting, I had to provide a telephone number for people to call and use the robot themselves. So it was kind of a double-edged sword. So if I wanted to pursue the publicity of it all, which was very new to me, and I'm an introvert, and so it was really difficult at times for me to face the attention and scrutiny. But in order to keep that going, I needed to provide this service for this phone number, and it got very expensive. And that's when I said, I got to monetize this to at least break even on the service. And so 2016 is when we sort of launched it. Since then, if I had any idea how many features it would eventually support and how nicely it would integrate with various technology and things that way, I probably would have given up right away because it would just have been, there's no way that you could develop this gigantic monstrosity. Anyway, so that was the long answer about how it all began.
That's interesting. So, I mean, like, how many users do you have, like, right now here, what, maybe 7 years after you created this thing?
We have several, 10,000 or so active users at any one time. It's growing. I hope it grows more. We have a free trial period, so it's hard to say that they're paying customers. There's not a lot of, I'm sure there are tools out there to do some better analysis of that. Unfortunately, my co-founder and I were geeky engineers and would much rather program telephone systems than point of sale analysis. systems. So, so we have a free trial period where people can use all services, evaluate the service. Some of them continue on with the service and actually let it bill. Some of them cancel ahead of time. Some of them let it bill and then send us an email asking us to cancel it, which is even just is very labor intensive providing the service that way. And so anyway, so we have a lot of people using it, but there's some cycling going on and a lot of churn and people moving on.
Interesting. So, I mean, have you gotten to a point where you're at least breaking even, hopefully turning a tidy profit as an American entrepreneur, which you are?
Yeah. Well, we kind of call it a self-funding hobby right now. So we're definitely hoping to grow. We do, but app development. I program phone systems, but sometimes we have to hire people to help with the web or help with a smartphone app. Hire people to help with customer service at times, depending on publicity and how busy things get. So, really, there's a lot of overhead that goes with it, and the services to provide it. ChatGPT is very cheap, and sending emails through Amazon is very cheap, and speech recognition is very cheap. But as soon as you add up, 10,000 phone calls a day, it's not very cheap anymore. And so that's where we've discovered that there's a fair amount of overhead that goes with it. So we're just hoping to, provide a nice. It's sort of a side job for both of us.
Well, yeah, you said before we joined that you think of the Jolly Roger as, what was it, the world's best answering machine? Like, help me to understand what you meant there.
Right. Well, when you get a phone call and you don't know who it is, or even if you do, you can just let it go and let Jolly Roger take the call. When we take the call, we have there's a lot of options that you can use as a subscriber of the service. They can be whitelisted callers and listen to your voicemail. They can be blacklisted callers and get a robot. They can be unknown callers and they're challenged. You can actually listen in on them leaving you a message and decide if you want to pick up or not. Right. So you just like an old answering machine, you can actually monitor the call as they're leaving you a message or talking to a robot, and you can decide I want to pick that up or I want to send them to a robot if they're a telemarketer. We have some new features now where you can record your own custom greeting per caller. So if you want your poker buddies to hear a different voicemail message than your regular family, then you can record a different message for people depending on who they are. So there's a lot of enhancements that we're doing. I'm sort of a mad scientist and like to tinker all the time, and so there's a lot of features that we're adding as things go on.
Interesting. So if the Baroness calls me, and obviously I just want to mess with her, well, I mean, could I have the robot go after her? It's kind of loud.
You can record a specific robot just for her if you'd like.
Oh, no.
Okay, kind of sound like me and just basically like say, "This is the boss," over and over.
Yeah.
Not right now. It's not true. I mean, if I said those things, she'd know it's a robot. But I mean, is that more or less how it works?
Yes, exactly. So we have ways you can record a greeting, or you can actually record the robot algorithm is fairly complicated and sophisticated. So you'll record some yeses and some hellos and some grunts and some sort of stupid, inane statements, we call them, right? So you can record some things that are just completely inane to try to draw them back in and keep them talking. And you can record your own robot.
That's 90% of human conversation these days.
Right. So it's hard to tell the difference. That's right.
Yeah, and now only you can find a way to make an emoji audible. I mean, that you'd be gold. Well, it's fascinating, man. Now, is this like your full-time job, or do you do something else on the side?
I work on telephones on the side. I'm a telecom engineer for down here in Southern California. I work for a large healthcare company.
And you just basically keep their phones making outbound calls to your robot. Is basically what's going on.
No, that doesn't the two technologies very rarely mix. And so my day job, they're certainly aware of these evening and weekend activities, but they don't often overlap very often.
Yeah,
Although I have to be honest with you, though, I've scrolled through my inbox and I get a lot of trade information, emails and notifications and announcements that do mention you. Your firm is quite famous in the industry, and I'm really flattered to be here.
Well, first of all, we are very famous. Second of all, you are wise to be flattered. But in seriousness, no, I mean, look, from my perspective, I love bringing on folks onto the show who are entrepreneurs, entrepreneurs, how dare you, entrepreneurs, folks that are developing something new, something interesting, a space for themselves in the telecom world. And of course, I'm the czar, the telecom world. I love to bring people on, the mad scientists of the realm, to kind of hear what they're up to, what they're tinkering with, and what they have to offer. So, look, I'm really glad to have you, and I'm glad that you agreed to come on. Anything else you want to tell us about the Jolly Roger? Anything else you have working that you're working on? I just think it's cool technology. And look, let me actually, before I ask that question, let me acknowledge that a lot of the folks that watch this program, right? We've got a lot of call centers, we've got a lot of lead generators, we've got a lot of folks that are telemarketers. Hopefully, only the good guys. Hopefully, not the bad guys watch this show. So there's gonna be a couple of people watching this, like throwing stuff at the screen, saying, "Why are you bringing this guy on, Troutman? Like, what are you doing?" But I just think it's fun. I like to have folks that have all the different perspectives on a matter, and obviously whether the folks that want to watch this show want to acknowledge it or not, most consumers do not want to hear from telemarketers, right? Now there's exceptions, people that raise their hand, they want to hear from somebody, and that's fine, that's great. Call centers exist for that reason, and telemarketing does have a role in our society, and there is value to it. But for the majority of people who are getting calls they didn't ask for, they love the idea. It's very American. It's uniquely American. It's very anti-hero sort of thing. It's uniquely American to have a robot just mess with these guys and try to keep them online as long as possible. It was attractive to me. I thought it was very funny when I heard about it. So nice work. Nice work.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yes. I love, I spent my entire career in telecom. I love telecom and almost all aspects of it. Um, it's not easy to accidentally get a robot. So the clients that you work with that are complying with TCPA regulations, et cetera, they're probably not, getting these robots. I suspect that they're not. And so it's mostly for the scammers from overseas. It's mostly for the ones that really are aggressive with telemarketing that will get these. And it does sort of, if anyone is interested in, or they're getting a lot of these calls, and they are looking to maybe pursue some TCPA lawsuits or filings or et cetera. The Jolly Roger Telephone Company does provide, detailed call logs, recordings of every call. If the telemarketer does announce themselves or identify themselves at the top of the call, you have that in recording. It is possible to record your own robot that says "Take me off your list," and then if you get a repeat caller, then there's a violation that you have a log of. So, I'm hoping that it works well in partnerships with the rest of the industry that's trying to fight telemarketing, because there aren't many of us doing this, and it's a small world, and we're all in this fight together.
Well, I'm going to ask this question. I'm going to get a big groan from all of my audience when I ask. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe I shouldn't even ask, but I'm going to. Do you or have you thought about being a referral source for law firms that bring these cases, the plaintiff side? I mean, for instance, there's that Law HQ guy. I'm not sure if you're aware of this guy. He's got an app, and literally the app is like if you get a call that you don't recognize and you swipe left, somehow like in the fine print of the app, that's like retaining his law firm to sue that company or something. It's just
Okay.
absolutely wild. And First Orion did something similar for a while, where if a company was reported as spam, they would take those reports and they'd like sell them to plaintiffs' law firms, who would then turn around and file a lawsuit against the caller. Do you operate that way, or are you just solely kind of wasting people's time using their own?
I really had hoped at one time to partner with a firm to provide that type of service. We had before we had apps and a dynamic website, et cetera, we had sort of a link on the email. Every call would generate a recording, and then we would email that recording to you. And there would be a link in that email saying, "Hey, do you want to report this as a violation?" And you'll probably relate to this as well. First of all, it was difficult to find a partner that was interested in that data in such a way that would be helpful to everybody and benefit everybody. Secondly, these violations can take a while, right? And so there'd be a whole new operation to try to keep track of who reported it and how many calls, and then 6 months later, 12 months later, there might be something, and then you are much closer to this than I am, and I'm very cynical. in my world, you go through all this effort and work and you get a check for 50 cents at the end of a year later. And so it just didn't seem worth it to me. So I don't know, perhaps it's a better deal than that. I would love to work with a firm about TCPA violations though. So if anyone is out there interested or Trout is interested, yes, I would love to work with them.
Here we go. I should not have encouraged that. I'm going to get my wrist slapped for this one. I guarantee you I'm going to get some angry emails. I rarely do. Most of the time I get emails that are perfectly lovely, telling me how great I am. Czar, you're fantastic. This one, I'm going to get some blowback. That's okay. I deserve it. That was.
Well, hopefully you've got people filtering those emails out so you only see the good ones.
No, I read them all.
Okay, all right.
And it's funny. Most of the time, I mean, they're usually great. People are incredibly grateful and incredibly kind. Do you guys have any questions for this film?
Well, I have maybe an obvious question,
Yes.
I assume I know the answer to, but did you know what the TCPA was before you started your business, or was it something you learned along the way while you're developing this product?
I did. I learned it along the way. So no, I was most of my work has been in call centers on the inbound side or PBX management and things that way. So I really didn't do a lot of predictive dialer programming or anything that way. And so I was not aware of TCPA. By the way, and I could go on and on. Obviously I love telecom and I love phones. I think it's probably very difficult for a legitimate call center, an outbound call center operation to comply with TCPA. It looks incredibly onerous to try to and expensive to comply with TCPA. And I understand there are some parts of the industry like the Camp Lejeune lawsuits, et cetera, where it's just the cost of doing business. It's more expensive and more of a hassle to comply with everything than just to occasionally spend the 50 grand to pay fines. We'll just keep going on the operations. So,
Well, I hate that mindset. I'd like to think that you can always operationalize compliance. I mean, I think there are some people that view it as like a speeding ticket that you have to pay, but we try not to represent those kinds of folks. We really, my practice is dedicated and focused on companies that really try to comply with the law. But as you are correct, the law is very challenging. It's constantly changing. It's very, very unfair the way it's applied. And so when you get a good company that's trying to do things the right way, but they still get hit in one of these cases, these are companies generally I'm very proud to defend. I'm very honored to be their counsel because these are good companies trying to do the right thing, caught up in an unfair law.
Right.
I'm very happy to defend those cases. Cases where people are like, it's too hard. I'm just gonna do things my own way. And
yeah.
If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. That's we're not interested in those kinds of things.
Yeah. The most obvious thing I neglected to mention with this is it's almost always impossible to know who the caller is. There's the know your customer regulations. Well, there's no way to do the corresponding know your telemarketer. There's just no way to know your telemarketer. And there's an organization trying to help out with tracebacks and things like that. But even that process, it's days long per number. It's manual. It's just not. There's no hope. I'm really disgruntled and discouraged about how this is working out in the industry, and I don't want to get to the point where no one picks up the phone anymore. That's what I'm really worried about, and I'm afraid that's where we're going.
Well, hopefully not. I mean, the efforts of Reach, our trade organization, to try to stop the unwanted calls and get the carriers to allow the good actors to send through their calls, and with the FCC now back at full strength, hopefully the NPRM process will come, with the determination that leaves industry with some breathing room, but also most importantly gets consumers to really feel confident answering the phone again, which is something that everybody in the ecosystem wants and needs. Otherwise, I mean, look, it might not be far fetched to say that the telephone, as a service, I'm not talking about the smartphone functionality. I mean, like the voice channel communication on a handset might be a thing of the past here in a few years as we move to apps, as we move to other forms of communication. And so, I mean, people really start thinking about the idea that the entire wireless communication infrastructure in this country is at risk. Maybe for better, maybe for worse, if folks don't stop, making unwanted calls. So that's one of the things I always keep in mind is, I guess I'm a bit of a dinosaur, but I like telephones. I want them to stick around. I don't want the new technology to come over, and I probably won't know how to use it. I'm too old. But anyway, all right, man. Well, it was great having you on the show. Anything else? We'll give you like 30 seconds or a minute. Anything you want to talk about? Anything you want to pitch?
Oh, thank you. Well, if anyone listening wants to go to jollyrogertelephone.com, you can sign up, evaluate the service for 30 days, try all the features. There's a lot of interesting and fun things happening now with ChatGPT. We're feeding it some funny prompts. So, based upon, it's all about the super prompt with ChatGPT. So these robots can take on a completely interesting personality that you would have never thought of. And then when interacting with telemarketers, every conversation is different because ChatGPT will try to pitch a glow in the dark toothbrush to that telemarketer trying to sell, life alert messages or something that way. So it's really an interesting combination between ChatGPT and your most annoying telemarketer. So give it a shot if you don't mind.
At some point, Roger, you got to send us some exemplar clips of some of these communications. I think that would be a lot of fun. We can have Zaina put together like a super cut of it or put it up on our YouTube channel.
Oh, that'd be great. That would be great.
All right, man. Well, hey, thank you so much for being on the show. You were great.
Thank you very much. I'm really flattered. I really appreciate it.
That guy was a lot of fun. I love having a mad scientist, a real entrepreneurial innovator on the show. Somebody who's really kind of helped, I think, to put a smile on some people's faces. And in the telecom world, I think that's really cool. But let's throw it around. What do you think, Britt?
I really enjoyed him. He was kind of different than what we normally have on the podcast, so I really enjoyed that. It's really interesting to see, what people are doing these days with AI technology and ChatGPT. People are like becoming really innovative and trying new things. So I thought that was really cool. And another thing that I thought was cool was that you could train it to use your own voice. So that's a little bit scary, actually.
Yeah, you're right. Because the first thing I thought about was a scam, right? I mean, people are constantly, big law, right, is always falling victim to scams and I guess the MGM got hacked the other day. If you can train these things with voice, I imagine AI can be pretty sophisticated when it comes to kind of breaking down barriers, social engineering, as it were, and getting information. But, it's nice to see the technology being put to, I would not say good use, but to frivolity, I suppose, as opposed to, trying to destroy something. But thanks for your thoughts. I appreciate that. And good job today, Baroness. Very nice. How about you, Dame? What do you think?
Well, I thought it was interesting that he admitted to recording all these conversations whenever that can lead to other problems for him. I know he said a lot of these telemarketers are overseas, but you have to assume that not all of them are going to be from overseas.
Interesting point.
I also find it interesting that if and when you have to disclose that you're speaking to AI, what happens to his entire business model if that ever comes to play?
The disclosure rules around AI at this point are chatbots. Pretty vague, pretty unclear. Definitely risky, though, because you could see some UCL exposure even under the current law. But you're not wrong, Tori. SIPA comes to mind. I mean, you're talking about an undisclosed third party that's listening in on a communication that was intended for the consumer that's not on the line. Even worse, if they're pretending to be the consumer, it could be fraud. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't be using this. I think it's fun. Again, I think it's frivolity. But you're right. There's a couple of interesting little wrinkles here. Pretty fascinating. Good job today. Appreciate you, Dame. Partner, what'd you think?
Well, I just think it's interesting how many different apps and programs and companies and law firms like ours that are, really trying to combat telemarketers and robocalls. It seems, at least in our industry, that folks are just trying to figure out new creative ways to help these robocalls stop. So, in addition, obviously, to organizations like Reach, it appears that he thinks he is kind of a savior in this industry. And maybe he is, right? Maybe he is kind of helping to distract telemarketers and prevent them from calling other consumers. So I think that's cool. Anyone who's on the side of where they want consumers to stop getting harassed is a win for me.
Yeah, I don't get the sense that he thought of himself as a savior. That's kind of my gig. He's the mad scientist. He's a tinkerer, right? He said several times, he's a telecom engineer. He's playing around in the laboratory. He's coming up with something new. And I respect that. I like that visual image. You kind of like it too, right?
Yeah, I can see like Einstein coming out.
Yeah, he's an odd guy. I didn't say he didn't come to mind. I'm trying to think who came to mind. It was like some character out of like a cartoon I saw as a kid or something. I mean, he was like Honestly, he could literally have like one of those like kids technology YouTube channels and like
Kids
teach,
get a brain
teach kids about like what happens when you mix the green vial and the blue vial. Yeah. Anyway, I really like the guy. We try to branch out. We try to bring kind of different guests on, folks that are kind of from all across the telecom world. Here at TCPA World, obviously he's heard a bunch about us. He's very, very famous. Everybody knows us these days. It's a wonderful thing to be famous. I mean, it's not bad, but really what I like about it is being able to influence change, right? And of course, you saw we talked about that earlier on the podcast. Being able to use our voice, use our platform to really help steer policy in this country, help inform folks to do the right thing as private actors, but also governmental actors. And we fit right here, and all of this is just through the power of giving, right? Which people forget. Like, how did the czar become the czar, right? It wasn't by being the best lawyer in the world, which of course I am. There's a lot of good lawyers out there, not as good as me. But that's what it is, right? It was that there was thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of blogs that I've written and speaking arrangements and meetings, and I've never turned down anything or anything. You ask me for something, I'm going to provide it. And over years and years and years, right, this really leads to a situation where everybody knows who you are, everybody respects you, and people, if you give enough to them, they want to give back to you. They want to do the right thing. They want to listen to you. So it's a wonderful thing, and I'm really obviously very grateful to kind of be in the position that we're in, to be able to drive the sort of change that we drive. And he's trying to drive the change too, which kind of the point you were making, in his own way. And I love that, right? Everyone in society should do the things that they can do to drive change. All right, folks. Well, thank you so much for joining this, the 16th edition of the Deserve to Win podcast. We'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.